You know that feeling. You're sitting right next to the person you love, maybe even under the same roof, but it feels like miles are stretching between you. You're in the same room, yet your worlds don't touch. They're scrolling on their phone, you're finishing emails, or maybe both of you are just staring at the TV. Silent, disconnected, almost strangers sharing a couch. And in those moments, it hurts more than if they weren't even there, because what you miss isn't their presence. It's their connection. And here's the truth you may not want to admit out loud. It doesn't feel like one big fight that broke things apart. It's the tiny, invisible moments. The good night that's said quickly, without warmth. The rushed goodbye in the morning. The habit of sharing updates about your day, without ever sharing your actual feelings. You start to notice that even when you laugh together, it feels thinner than it used to. And the scariest part, you wonder if this is just what happens in relationships. If the closeness that once felt natural and effortless is gone forever. But let me tell you something that might shift your whole perspective. Connection doesn't collapse in a day. And it doesn't take a lifetime to rebuild either. What if instead of trying to fix everything at once, you gave just 15 intentional minutes a day? 15 minutes. Not scrolling, not multitasking, not being half there, but actually investing, fully present. Imagine what would happen if you stopped waiting for the perfect vacation, the deep weekend conversations, or the once-a-year reset to get close again. Imagine if every day became its own quiet act of rebuilding. You might be skeptical, maybe you're thinking 15 minutes. How could that possibly undo months, maybe years of drifting apart? But here's the thing. You don't need to reverse time, you need to rewire your habit. Because relationships are not built in grand gestures. They are built in the ordinary, repeated sacred routines that whisper you matter, you're seen, I still choose you. And the reason you're here listening right now is because something inside you is tired of feeling like a roommate instead of a partner. Something inside you knows there has to be a way back. And you're about to learn how 15 minutes can become the difference between numb distance and renewed intimacy. You're about to see how much power you already hold in the smallest slices of your day. So take a deep breath, because for the next few minutes, I want you to imagine that you and the person you love are not broken beyond repair. You're not too late. You're not asking for too much. You're simply standing at a fork in the road. Down one path, you keep doing what you've been doing, waiting, hoping, letting the distance grow until it swallows the bond you once had. Down the other, you decide today, right now, that 15 minutes will no longer slip through your fingers unnoticed. You decide that connection isn't lost, it just needs a rhythm again. Think about this. When you first fell in love, connection didn't feel like work. You were curious about every detail of their life. You lingered in conversation. You looked at them, really looked, as if their face alone could tell you a story. Every moment was an invitation. But over time, familiarity replaced curiosity. Routine replaced presence. And now silence replaces words. That doesn't mean the love is gone. It means the ritual of seeing each other has faded. What if the solution is not a grand gesture, but a return to that rhythm? Here's the secret nobody tells you. It's not the amount of time you spend together that rebuilds connection. It's the quality of attention. 2 hours of distracted scrolling side by side cannot give you what 15 minutes of undivided presence can. That 15 minutes, when practiced consistently, can become the anchor that slowly pulls your relationship back to shore. But here's where you need to be honest with yourself. When was the last time you gave them your undivided presence? Not your distracted nod, not your half listening while cooking dinner, not your I'll catch up later, but actual attention as if they were the only person in the world at that moment. If you can't remember, that's not something to feel ashamed of. It's something to feel awake to. Because now you know what's missing. The reason we feel disconnected is not because the love disappeared, but because the rituals that nourish love have withered. Imagine your relationship as a garden. It doesn't die overnight. It dies from days of forgetting to water it, weeks of neglect, months of assuming it will survive on its own. But the moment you start showing up daily with even a small amount of care, life begins to grow back. That's what these 15 minutes can become. Your daily watering of the bond that once made you feel alive together. So I want you to picture something right now. Tomorrow, when you wake up, instead of rushing past each other in the kitchen, or scrolling on your phone while sipping coffee, you stop, you turn to them. You ask one question that isn't about schedules or chores, but about their inner world. And for those few minutes, you let the world outside wait. That one shift, small, intentional, consistent, can be the spark that lights the fire again. And here's the part you need to hold on to. This isn't about waiting for them to change first. This isn't about blaming them for not noticing you. This is about what you can do right now, today, with the time you already have. 15 minutes, that's it. And you'll be shocked at how quickly the distance begins to shrink when you bring your whole self into those moments. Because love doesn't die in loud explosions. It fades in quiet neglect. And it doesn't have to be rescued with dramatic declarations. It can be rebuilt in steady, sacred daily rituals. You don't need more time. You just need to give the time you already have a new purpose. And once you start, you'll see how those 15 minutes ripple outward, how they soften the tension, how they invite laughter back, how they turn routine into relationship again. And if you're still doubting, let me ask you this: what do you have to lose? If the distance is already there, if the silence is already heavy, if the routine is already cold, what's the risk in giving 15 minutes? You've tried doing nothing, and it hasn't worked. You've tried waiting, and it hasn't worked. Maybe it's time to try present. Maybe it's time to choose connection, not someday, not when the fight is over, not when the timing is perfect, but today. Because the truth is, connection doesn't rebuild itself. It rebuilds when you choose it. And the beauty is, you don't have to choose it for hours a day. You just have to choose it fully for 15 minutes. And that choice, repeated, becomes the rhythm that can bring you back to each other. So let's walk into that rhythm together. Let's explore how those 15 minutes can look, how they can feel, and how they can transform the way you experience each other. Because the relationship you miss isn't gone. It's waiting on the other side of presence. So now you know the truth. It's not about finding endless hours. It's about reclaiming a pocket of time that's already there. 15 minutes. Small enough to feel doable. Powerful enough to create change. But here's the question sitting in your mind. What do I actually do with those minutes? How do I make them matter? And this is where presence transforms into practice. Because those minutes can't be filled with the same distracted conversations, the same surface level exchanges, the same tired routines. They have to become sacred. They have to be treated like a ritual, not a leftover. Think of it like this. These 15 minutes are the heartbeat of your relationship. If you give them intentionally, they pump life into everything else. The first way you can use them is deceptively simple. Put everything else away. Phones down. TV off. No multitasking. Just you and them, face to face, eye to eye. It might feel awkward at first, even unnatural, because distraction has become the default. But that awkwardness is proof of how much you need it. When was the last time you looked into their eyes without rushing, without expecting, without judging? That gaze alone can begin to soften the walls you didn't realize you'd built. Then let the conversation shift. These 15 minutes are not for logistics. Not for did you pay the bill, or what's for dinner, or don't forget to pick up the kids. No, those are conversations of function, not connection. This time is for the heart. You can start with simple, but powerful questions. What made you smile today? What challenged you? What's been on your mind that you haven't said out loud yet? You'd be amazed how much someone reveals when they feel there's actually space to be heard. And here's something vital. Your job is not to fix, not to correct, not to jump in with solution. Your job is to listen fully, actively, curiously. To nod, to reflect, to say, tell me more about that. Because often what your partner craves isn't an answer, it's acknowledgement. They want to know that their world matters to you, that you're not just sharing a house but sharing a life. But connection doesn't only live in words. Sometimes it lives in touch. So maybe your 15 minutes isn't a conversation at all. Maybe it's sitting together on the couch, holding hands without scrolling through screens. Maybe it's a hug that lingers a little longer than usual. Maybe it's resting your head on their shoulder in silence, letting your body say what words can't. Don't underestimate the power of that. It's often those moments of quiet physical closeness that rebuild trust in ways language can't reach. Another way is to create a micro-tradition, something small but consistent, that belongs only to the two of you. It could be having tea together before bed, taking a short walk after dinner, sharing a song you both love, or even reading a few pages of the same book out loud. The activity itself doesn't matter as much as the fact that it's yours. Shared rituals anchor relationships, because they whisper, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is our little world. And that shared world is what turns a partnership into something sacred. Now maybe you're thinking, but what if they don't show up? What if I try, and they brush me off? That fear is real, and it's valid. But remember, connection often takes time to reawaken. If distance has become the norm, your first attempts might feel resisted or ignored. Don't take that as proof it won't work. Take it as proof of how starved your relationship is for presence. Keep showing up, keep offering, without forcing. Sometimes the consistency of your effort becomes the invitation they didn't even know they were waiting for. And let me say this clearly, this isn't about perfection. Some days, those 15 minutes will feel electric. You'll laugh, you'll connect, you'll feel like you've stepped back into the version of your relationship you've missed. Other days, it might feel clumsy, even heavy, like you're dragging conversation out of thin air. That's okay. Consistency is more important than intensity. Because over time, your nervous system begins to expect connection. Your hearts begin to lean back toward each other. The routine becomes the bridge. Think about it this way. When you go to the gym once, you don't walk out transformed. But when you go regularly, the results begin to show. Connection works the same way. 15 minutes once is nice. 15 minutes daily becomes transformation. Now let's paint a picture together. Imagine this week you set aside those minutes each night before bed. You and your partner sit across from each other, phones away, maybe with a candle lit to make the space feel intentional. At first, the conversation feels a little forced, but then, slowly they share something about their day that surprised them. You ask a question, not out of obligation, but out of real curiosity. They smile, almost relieved, like they'd been carrying that story alone. You both laugh, and in that laugh, you catch a glimpse of the old spark, a spark that was never gone, just buried. Or imagine this. You decide to take a short walk together each morning, just around the block. The air is fresh, the world is quiet, and for 15 minutes, you are teammates, not just parents, not just co-workers in a shared household, but companions. The conversations flow differently when you're side by side instead of face to face. They share things they wouldn't over dinner, and suddenly, mornings feel less like a rush, more like a ritual. This is the secret. Those 15 minutes don't just connect you in the moment, they change the tone of everything else. When you've had that pocket of intimacy, the small annoyances of the day don't sting as much. The arguments feel less threatening, because you've already touched base emotionally. You carry a sense of being on the same team. And slowly, almost without realizing it, the distance shrinks. But here's where your courage is required. You can't treat this as a quick fix. You can't approach it with the thought, I'll try this for a week, and if nothing changes, I'll stop. No, connection isn't a transaction, it's a commitment. You don't water a plant for a few days and then give up when it hasn't bloomed yet. You keep watering because you trust the process. The same is true here. These minutes are not about instant transformation, they're about planting daily seeds that eventually grow into intimacy again. And let's not forget, connection isn't only about the heavy or serious. In fact, one of the most healing things you can do in those minutes is to bring back play. Share a funny memory, tell a silly joke, dance in the kitchen for one song, laugh until your stomach hurts. Because sometimes what you've lost isn't only depth, it's lightness. And lightness is just as important. Now pause for a second. Imagine yourself a month from now, having practiced this daily, 15 minutes each day. Picture the way you'd look at each other differently. The way you'd speak with less tension. The way you'd start to feel like allies again. That version of your relationship isn't some fantasy. It's waiting for you on the other side of showing up. So here's the challenge I'll leave you with today. Don't just listen to these words. Don't just nod and agree. Choose one moment in your day tomorrow, morning, evening, whenever you can, and make it sacred. Put the distractions away. Ask a real question, share a real thought, or simply sit in silence and hold each other. Do it for 15 minutes, and then the next day, and the next, and watch how consistency becomes connection, and connection becomes closeness, and closeness becomes love again. Because love doesn't need hours. It doesn't need perfection. It doesn't need a flawless plan. It just needs you present, intentional, willing for 15 minutes. And those minutes repeated can rebuild what you thought was lost. Picture this: weeks have passed, maybe even months. You've been giving those 15 minutes daily. Not perfectly, not without interruptions, but consistently enough that it's become part of your rhythm. At first it felt like effort. You had to remind yourself. You had to push through awkward pauses. You had to choose presence over distraction. But then slowly, something shifted. You noticed that you weren't dreading those minutes. You were looking forward to them. They became the exhale in your day, the pocket of peace where you could breathe again. You noticed something even more powerful. The tension that used to hover in the air, that unspoken distance, that made every silence heavy, began to soften. Conversations that once felt strained started to flow. Laughter started to slip back in, and the person sitting across from you didn't feel like a stranger anymore. They felt like home again. This is the transformation nobody tells you about. You don't rebuild connection with one dramatic breakthrough. You rebuild it by creating a new normal, one where intimacy is expected, not exceptional. And once that becomes the norm, everything else begins to change. Think about the version of you before, the version that sat in silence, scrolling through your phone, wondering if this was just what love turns into, coexistence, without closeness. That version of you felt lonely, even when not alone. You carried resentment that you didn't want to admit out loud. You felt like maybe the magic had run out. And worst of all, you feared that your story together was moving toward an ending you weren't ready for. Now compare that to the version of you after choosing presence. You don't just sit beside your partner. You sit with them. You don't just exchange information. You exchange hearts. You don't just share a house. You share a life again. And in that shift, the fear of loss starts to fade, because you realize love doesn't vanish. It either grows or it withers, and now you've chosen growth. But let's be honest, this transformation isn't just about them. It's about you, because when you give presence, you also receive it. When you listen deeply, you are reminded that you're capable of empathy. When you show up daily, you prove to yourself that you are not powerless, that you're not stuck waiting for them to fix things. You become the one who creates the conditions for intimacy, and that changes you. It makes you stronger, softer, more awake to love than you've ever been. Now imagine the ripple effect. When your partner feels seen, they show up differently too. They become more patient, more open, more affectionate. That warmth begins to spill into the way you both handle conflict. The same arguments that used to spiral now feel less destructive. Because beneath the disagreement, there's a baseline of trust. You know you're on the same team. And when you're on the same team, even hard conversations become safer. And then, there's the effect on the little things. Suddenly, small gestures mean more. The way they reach for your hand in the car, the way you bring them a cup of tea without being asked, the way you both smile at each other across a crowded room. These aren't just details, they're proof that the bond has come alive again. But here's something even deeper. When you commit to these routines, you begin to rewrite your story of what's possible. You stop believing the myth that love inevitably fades, that passion inevitably dies. That distance is the natural end of long-term relationships. Instead, you discover that love is renewable, that intimacy can be rebuilt, that closeness can deepen over time if you choose it. And that realization doesn't just save your relationship, it changes your belief in love itself. Think of it like this. When a building crumbles, most people assume it's gone forever. But the truth is, the foundation is still there. All it needs is rebuilding. That's what you're doing with these 15 minutes. You're not starting from scratch. You're restoring what was already sacred. And in some ways, what you build now may be stronger than what you had before, because it's rooted in choice, not just chemistry. Now, let me ask you, what's the alternative? If you don't choose these routines, what path are you on? More silence, more scrolling, more nights lying in bed, next to someone who feels far away, more mornings where the distance grows inch by inch, until one day it feels unbridgeable. That's not just sad, it's preventable. And the prevention doesn't require massive effort. It requires presence, daily, intentionally. And here's the part that might surprise you. This practice of 15 minutes doesn't just strengthen your romantic relationship, it strengthens you. It teaches you patience. It teaches you to listen without needing to control. It teaches you to slow down, to value quality over quantity, to discover joy in the ordinary. These are skills you carry everywhere, in friendships, in family, even in how you relate to yourself. Because presence, once practiced, doesn't stay in one place. It becomes a way of living. Now pause for a moment and imagine yourself years from now. Imagine sitting with your partner, not in tension, but in ease. Imagine looking back and realizing that the bond you saved wasn't saved by chance. It was saved because you showed up, day after day, minute by minute, in ways that seemed small but were everything. Imagine the pride of knowing that you didn't give up, that you chose love when it would have been easier to drift. That future is possible, and it begins with the minutes you choose today. And let's be clear, this isn't about perfection. There will still be argument. There will still be days where you're too tired, where life feels heavy, where connection feels harder to reach. But those days don't define you anymore, because you've built a rhythm strong enough to carry you through. You'll have the tools, the rituals, the memory of what closeness feels like, and that will guide you back every time. So let me tell you something I want you to hold close. You're not too far gone. Your love is not too broken. Your silence is not too deep. It only feels that way because you've forgotten how to touch base daily. But now you know. Now you see that intimacy isn't lost. It's waiting. And you can reclaim it. 15 minutes at a time. The beauty of this is that you don't have to wait for the perfect moment. You don't have to wait for the big vacation, the resolved fight, the kids to grow up, the schedules to align. You don't have to wait for anything, because you already have the time. 15 minutes is already there, hidden in your day, waiting to be transformed. The question is, will you take it? Because here's the truth. Love doesn't fade because it's impossible. Love fades because it isn't fed. And you have the power to feed it again, to nourish it daily, to breathe life back into what feels fragile. The only thing standing between you and that closeness is the choice to begin. And you can begin right now. So as you sit here, listening, don't just nod and think, that sounds nice. Make the decision. Decide that tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, you will reclaim those 15 minutes. Decide that your relationship is worth it. Decide that love deserves to be nourished, because the life you dream of, the connection you crave, isn't far away. It's just 15 minutes away. So here you are, standing at the edge of everything we've talked about. You've seen how distance grows in silence, how love withers in neglect, how connection fades, not with one giant collapse but with the slow erosion of daily habit. And you've also seen the other side, the side where intimacy is rebuilt, not with hours of effort or grand gestures, but with something as simple as sacred as 15 minutes of true presence. And now the question isn't can it work, because you already know it can. The question is, will you begin? Because here's the reality. Life won't slow down for you. The emails will still come, the responsibilities will still pile up, the kids will still need attention, the bills will still demand to be paid. There will never be a perfect time when all distractions disappear and connection feels effortless again. If you're waiting for that moment, you'll be waiting forever. But if you decide that love is too important to postpone, then you don't wait for the world to give you time. You make it, you carve out those 15 minutes fiercely and faithfully. Not because you have extra time, but because you value your relationship more than the distractions pulling you away from it. And maybe part of you feels scared right now. Scared of trying and being rejected. Scared of showing up and not seeing results. Scared that the gap between you is already too wide. Let me tell you this. Courage in love is not about being certain. It's about choosing to show up even when you're afraid. And if you can give just 15 minutes, you are already choosing courage. Remember this. Every great love story isn't built on flawless days or constant passion. It's built on the decision to return to each other again and again in the ordinary moments. That decision is what keeps two people growing instead of drifting, softening instead of hardening, building instead of breaking. And you hold that power in your hands. Now imagine yourself tonight. The day is done. You're tired, tempted to just collapse into routine. But instead you remember this choice. You put your phone aside. You turn toward your partner. Maybe you sit down beside them. Maybe you take their hand. Maybe you ask a simple question that isn't about logistics but about them. For 15 minutes you give them your full present. No rush, no distraction, no expectation, just presence. And maybe it feels small. Maybe it feels like nothing has changed. But what you don't see is that in that moment, you've shifted the entire direction of your relationship. You've planted a seed that when watered tomorrow, and the next day and the next, will grow into something extraordinary. You've opened a door. And sometimes that's all love needs. A door left open. Because connection doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't demand endless hours or dramatic effort. It demands presence. It demands willingness. It demands the courage to give a piece of your day to the one you love. And when you do consistently, it transforms everything. So ask yourself right now, who do you want to be in this story? The one who lets distance define the relationship, who drifts further until there's nothing left but silence, or the one who decides, today that love is worth 15 minutes, the one who doesn't wait for change but becomes the change, the one who says I still choose you every day, even in small ways. And don't underestimate how much that choice means, because love doesn't thrive on big promises, it thrives on daily proof. And those 15 minutes, when given with your whole heart, are proof enough. Proof that you're willing. Proof that you care. Proof that even in a world full of noise you still know how to be present. So here's the truth I want you to carry out of this moment. You are not powerless. You are not too late. You are not destined for distance. You already have what it takes to rebuild connection. You just need to give it shape. And that shape is 15 minutes. Daily, intentionally, consistently. Start tonight. Don't push it to tomorrow. Don't wait for the weekend. Don't tell yourself you'll begin when things calm down. Start tonight. Because every day you wait is another day of silence. And every day you choose presence is another day of healing. And when you look back weeks from now, months from now, even years from now, you'll see that this wasn't just about saving a relationship. It was about saving yourself from regret. It was about proving to yourself that love is worth the effort, that connection is worth the time, that intimacy is always possible when you show up for it. So let this be the beginning, not just of a routine but of a new chapter. A chapter where your love story doesn't fade quietly, but strengthens daily. A chapter where the bond between you isn't taken for granted, but treated like the sacred gift it is. A chapter where 15 minutes a day becomes the foundation for a lifetime of closeness. Because love doesn't ask for everything. It only asks that you show up. And when you do, consistently, wholeheartedly, for just a slice of your day, you'll find that connection is not lost. It's right here waiting for you, so choose it. Tonight, tomorrow, every day, 15 minutes. That's all it takes to rebuild the connection you thought was gone. to create the intimacy you've been missing, to write the story you've always wanted. The choice is in your hands. The time is already yours. The only question left is, will you give